Greetings, everyone. I just released my documentary about coffee in New York City and how it changed the world. It's called The Caffeinated City. It's a feature length documentary at an hour and 10 minutes that goes deep into the history of coffee in New York and also the roasters and baristas and coffee professionals working in coffee today. And also, I show, in essence, how coffee in New York City actually had a massive, massive impact across the world. I'm Ariel, this is Urbanist, and right now we're going to have a Q&A because the premiere just happened today on September 2nd, Labor Day of 2024, and after the premiere, I am here to do a Q&A with everyone. So let me know where you're watching from, how are you doing, and hope to answer any burning questions that you had about the Athens Urbanist. Let me turn off my notifications so I'm not interrupted during the live stream. And I'm happy to see people coming in. So let me know where you're watching from right now. I am drinking not coffee because it's very late. It's 8:30 p.m. right now in New York, and I won't be having a coffee. But in the spirit of coffee in New York, I have this beautiful ceramic cup version of the iconic New York City Blue Cup. You can find this at the MoMA store. You can find this in a few other gift shops around the city. And I'm actually having a Negroni. Negroni is one part vermouth, one part gin, one part Campari, one of my favorite cocktails. And cheers. It's a good way to celebrate. Cheers, everyone. Ah. Oh, good Negroni. Good Negroni served in this cup is one of my favorite things. You know, you can actually find this in New York City, like a real New York City coffee cup and a real Negroni served in it. You have to go to Cafe Abrazo in the East Village, 7th Street and 2nd Avenue. And they actually do serve Negronis in these coffee cups. So I'm so happy so many people tuned in. We had a very massive turnout today. 150 plus people tuned in for the premiere. Yesterday I hosted a in-person premiere where we had about 50 people, which was amazing to have so many people come and watch my work in person. This was the first time I ever hosted a premiere with actual people there watching my YouTube video. So I have to give a shout out to Kira, who actually encouraged me to host a premiere, and many other friends who throughout the years were saying that they really love my work and would love to see it in person one day. So thank you so much. And I have to shout out, this is not a solo effort. This coffee documentary started as a top 5 coffee video with my dear friend Jen. Jen is a fellow YouTuber, Instagrammer, and as we were filming this, I ended up realizing it's kind of hard to do a top 5 coffee video that's different from the deluge of coffee videos out there on YouTube. There's so many of them, and they all cover the same coffee shops. I actually already made 2 top 5 coffee shop videos, but this was like 6-7 years ago, before having coffee in New York became the cool thing, on YouTube or on Instagram. And now all the new coffee shop videos are all the same. There's only a few gems out there, like my friend Don of The Life of Don. He does really unique videos, but most of the other videos out there are all the same. So I decided maybe let me take a deeper look into coffee. I've always wanted to do this. I read books like Uncommon Grounds, which is one of the more mind-blowing books about coffee. I saw a lecture by Donald Schoenholt, who was the founder of the Specialty Coffee Association of America. He's featured in the documentary. And I started really noticing that coffee in New York is very important, just like coffee in Europe is very important to world history, to global history, to financial markets and industrial revolutions and political revolutions and the Age of Enlightenment. The same thing happened in New York. So I went deeper. And it was a labor of love of filming for 30 hours. The footage I have in official count, but it's between 20 and 30 hours of footage. I filmed this on my own in February, and some people who tune into my live streams and my Instagram shorts and my YouTube shorts and TikToks probably uh, remember me talking about this. And I shot it on my own, and my initial intention was for me to edit it into maybe a good 20-minute video, good 20, 30-minute video. But the stories just kept coming more and more and more and more and more. And I realized, oh no, I got a really, really fascinating story here. I got a full movie here, at least in terms of documentary. And and um, and initially I was going to edit it myself because my dear editor, Maria at Vida Querido, who did an amazing job with the Athens Urbanist, who's done an amazing job with other of my documentaries. Um, she was going to be busy going to the Edinburgh Urbanist, which is still coming. But as I started thinking about me editing, I started sitting down and I realized I need help. And it's okay to realize you need help. The reason I needed help was because I'm too attached to coffee in New York. It's too. I'm too in it. I am a New Yorker. I love coffee. I've been loving coffee for years. Already 15, 16 years. 16, 17 years at this point. 17 years. I started really falling in love with coffee about 12 years ago. I know a whole lot about coffee because I've researched so much. I've traveled to so many places. I'm too in it. And I thought to myself, this documentary, if I edited it, it would have been a very nerdy, in-depth look into coffee. It would have been too in the weeds, as people say in English, which means it would have been too specific, too niche. But I had my dear editor, Maria. And even though I really want to release the Edinburgh Urbanist as soon as possible, I decided Maria is interesting because she's from Greece. She likes coffee, but she's not like a coffee nerd. And she's been to New York, I think once, maybe twice. And it was great to have someone on the outside, someone who's not a New Yorker, someone who's not a coffee nerd, to edit this, to find the story that I wouldn't be able to find. I found the cool people, I filmed the cool people, I found the interesting individuals to talk about, I found the experts, but I needed someone to see what the story here was that was interesting to people who are not New Yorkers, who are not coffee lovers. So I brought Maria on to edit it, and she did find that story. And working together for the past many months, we came to this documentary. We found the heart of coffee in New York, at least from my perspective. And so far, the comments and so far the people who've seen it in real life have told me the same thing, that there was heart in this documentary, which is my number one goal. I love educating. I love telling you cool stories. And my ultimate goal is always to entertain. But I realize the best entertainment is not the one that tickles your mind, it's the one that touches your heart. And when it comes to learning, the best way we can learn is not just stimulating your logic, your reasoning, your rational thinking mind. But we need to have heart in it as well. When you can feel something emotionally and also learn about the chronology and the history and the events and all the different people involved in it. If you combine those two things, heart and mind, I think you truly end up being really entertained and really learning. So let me know what you think of the documentary. I'm so glad so many people tuning in. I'm going to open up the floor. Feel free to ask me anything about the documentary or about coffee that you learned. But ideally, ask me things about the documentary for the first 20 minutes. Then I'll entertain any questions about coffee in New York. Food Plane says, great storytelling. Thank you so much, Food Plane. Thank you so much, DS. Darlene says, I really enjoyed this documentary. It was informative. Thank you for sharing the deeper insight on coffee. Cheers. All the music playing in the background, by the way, is Urbanist original music that can be found on Spotify. Search Urbanist. I have 5 albums up there. One of them is called an Urbanist Coffee Break, which some of those songs were in the documentary. Hey, Susie, nice to see you here. Hello, Matt says, good morning from California. Hey, good evening from California. Thank you so much for tuning in. Fresh Take says, yes, please always go deeper. Indeed, deep is good. Susie says, raising a mug of chamomile. Oh, nice. Hey, Tom says, wonderful documentary of coffee in New York. Man, my pleasure. Inkspire Life says, congrats on your newest masterpiece. Hey, man, thank you so much for the kind words. I really do appreciate that. Would you do a coffee tour, says Darlene. Let me see where. Darlene, nice to see you here. Welcome. Coffee Insomnia says, great documentary. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. Good evening, Julie. Too hot to hold that cup with a hot coffee in it. Indeed, yeah. The mug right now is like freezing cold because I have a cold Negroni in here. It was so amazing, says Surfboard. Hey man, Surfboard, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm so happy you enjoyed this. How many hours would you say it took to put together? I can't speak for Maria. Maria spent a lot of time editing. I spend 2 weeks, about 3 weeks filming initially, the main film. And then I worked with Emma Carrero, who is featured in the documentary as well. She helped me film extra footage, and that took about 2 weeks on and off. And then I wrote the script. And it's if you could tell from the documentary, it's very script heavy, very voiceover heavy. And that took me a lot of hours. I can't tell you exact number. I would say I hammered down the script in about a week and a half. A week and a half it took me to really get that script. Hours of writing per day, really get it perfect. Yeah. So many hours. Dozens, if not more, hours in total. And then Katerina is a wonderful colorist and illustrator. And Katerina also spent a lot of hours coloring this. This was shot in a flat color profile called log format for anyone who's not a filmmaker. There was basically a little color in the initial film of it. So we had to add a lot of color to it on purpose because I wanted a unique look to the film. And we achieved that. Pythagorean, thank you so much, Constantine, for tuning in. Says, I'm incredibly proud to be your acquaintance. You're evolving rapidly in your storytelling. This was simply amazing. Glad to see the Greek ladies working for you as well. Indeed. I've had a great. I've been blessed to have two amazing people who work with me, who are from Greece, that just do amazing work. Foodplay says there was so much well done from a filmmaking perspective, different from the usual coffee documentary. So well done. Thank you so much. Yeah, my idea was to make a coffee documentary that was something that I wanted. You know, honestly, I tried researching coffee, and the only coffee documentaries really that you can find on YouTube or on Netflix is about the history of coffee. And the history of coffee usually is about the story about Ethiopia and Yemen and a little bit about the European introduction of coffee. But nothing goes terribly deep into it. PBS has a good documentary on it. And then there's a few other good documentaries, but they're only about far history. Well, far history meaning like Ethiopia 2,000 years ago, and then Yemen, the Middle East, and parts of Europe like Turkey and Austria. That type of history is from like 1400s to 1600s. So I can't really find a documentary that talks about modern coffee culture and then let alone New York coffee history. And I wanted to combine them both. Because I think if you just stick to the history, then you have a very typical BBC or PBS documentary, which I like, I love, I would love to work for the BBC. But I think if you relate modern times with history, I think it's more entertaining, in my opinion. So that's why I filmed it that way. And then also, many YouTube videos about coffee just talk about the coffee shop, maybe the quality of the coffee. They might interview the barista or the cafe owner, but they never go deeper. They never tell you about the history, the backstory of the coffee, or they don't even explain what the coffee drinks are. And one question that I always get on my live streams and also on my videos is, what is a latte? What is a cappuccino? What is a cold brew? And this documentary, I found the perfect opportunity to just explain it, just like simply, and but to make it entertaining at the same time. And luckily, I had a great guest with Joseph Gonzalez of Espresso State of Mind, who was able to teach us about coffee in a very, very entertaining way. Hey, Mercy says, do you ever drink café con leche? Coffee with milk? No, I don't like milk. The only milk I would even entertain drinking is coconut milk. It's very rare to find coffee shops nowadays with coconut milk. Starbucks actually offers coconut milk, which is nice. So that caramel macchiato you saw me drink in the documentary from Starbucks, there was a short shot of it. It had coconut milk in it. I really don't like milk. I really didn't like milk ever since I was young. When I started drinking coffee, I drank milk, but I never had true deep pleasure in milk. It's just something I really never liked. For a little while, I liked oat milk. Then they changed their recipe and started making me bloated. So no, I never was a fan of milk. Coconut milk would be the only thing I would like drinking for a coffee. So I drink my coffee black all the time. Have you tried buttering your coffee? I have, and it is unique. It is very unique. I'm gonna eat a piece of bread over here. Mm. Sorry, that was good bread. I got some sourdough bread, and I put some olive oil from Greece and some oregano from Greece. So, Darlene asked, would you ever consider writing a book? I have a New York City guide that's available, and it will be updated very, very soon. I gotta tell you, it was a pleasure writing this documentary. Writing it, you know, most of my, basically all my short videos, and definitely my live streams, are all non-scripted. I'm a very extemporaneous speaker. I prefer not to be scripted. But of course, in the nature of the documentary, I think part of the fun of the documentary is trying to tell a very cohesive story that encompasses many different locations and places. So I can't be as extemporaneous, at least in the purest sense of the word. So I can't be just speaking without a script or without notes and someone filming me. It works for some shots, but ultimately you have to bring things together. So I wrote a very, very strong script for this documentary. Same thing with Athens Urbanist. And the script was a lot of fun because when writing the script, I kept in mind Anthony Bourdain, not to replicate his style, but I've always was very impressed by how Anthony Bourdain was so able to eloquently describe different cultures and countries and their foods, and just make it very fun. Also, he would describe in this with this style and with this swagger that would be really engaging, and I really love that about Anthony Bourdain. And I thought to myself, like, I can do this. I've been a writer longer than I've been a filmmaker. I was a blogger for 6 years before I started making videos. So I've always loved writing, and I realize I can maintain my style of kind of free swinging, spontaneously telling a story, but I can do it in writing too. So the way I wrote the script is stream of consciousness. I did not write an outline and then edit. So basically, Maria edited a rough cut of the story, and then later on she told me, "Oh, we'll need this for voiceover. We'll need this for this part. We'll need you to describe this. I'll need you this to describe that." And Maria was very good to give me like very specific notes on what she needed to bring the story together. And that's when I started writing. And I wrote it like if I were telling a story right now to you in person. Of course, it took many days because it's slower, but in essence, that's how I wrote it. So would I write a book? Yeah, if I could do that, but it'll take me a long time. But yeah, I would do it someday. I'm tempted to make the coffee documentary script into like a article. So maybe I'll publish it on urbanist.live, which is a blog that I barely post to. Hello, Sally. Nice to see you here. Hey, Brown Eyed Girl says, the vision of you having a cafe that shows films of various genres and your own coffees would be a dream. Imagine the coffee culture would gather. Yeah, I think it would be cool. Food Play says, is coffee in a way a lot like wine? Yes. Coffee is a lot like wine. Yes, for sure. It is. Susie says, was it difficult filming in the snowstorm? I didn't film too much in the snowstorm. It was snowing, but I didn't film too much in the snowstorm. Darlene says, trust me, your books will be a bestseller. Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you. I love this documentary format because I can tell a story. It's not about me. Like I that's why I haven't written a book because I really don't want to talk about myself too much. I'd rather talk about something else, especially a place. So I don't envision myself really writing too much fiction. I do have one fiction book called Retrowave, and that's on Amazon. It's a short novella, about 45 pages long. But I've always been more interested in things and history. So, maybe one day I'll write a book about that. All right. So Sally says, hair looks fantastic. Hey, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Cindy says, I love the coffee doc. Paul says, well done to you and your coworkers. Thank you so much. Have you heard of mushroom coffee? I have. I've tried it, and most of the time I did not like it. Found it very weak. Brown Eyed Girl says, it's okay to enjoy yourself. Indeed. I would like to give thanks to your team, says Darlene, for their hard work. Yes, round of hearts. It was a team of 3, and of course many other people helped in many other ways. But it was Maria, Caterina, and Emma. Team of 3. So many amazing people who helped me make this documentary come into a reality. Brown Eyed Girl says, explain the patching you did. It was seamless. You totally fluid in sequencing as you told the story. Yeah. Great question. So, Brown Eyed Girls in essence is... Well, let me read Benji's comment before I get into Brown Eyed Girls. Benji says, proud to see you growing and growing as a presenter. Thank you so much. Very well done, dude. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. Susie said, my sister had a terrible allergic reaction to mushroom coffee. Oh, that sucks. Yeah, I can imagine. It's good to know what's in the cup. Love the documentary, says Beach Bum. I don't drink coffee, but my interest is enlightened to maybe take the habit of it. I'm glad to hear that. So the patching, by patching, Brown Eyed Girls referring to the editing, how the story was put together. So the process me and Maria have is I film a lot, or in the case of Athens, she helped me film a lot. But in the coffee documentary, I filmed a lot, of conversations, a lot of interviews from different people. There's interviews that unfortunately did not make the final cut. So I film a lot, and then I gave it to Maria and said, Maria, find the story. And I'm glad that Maria enjoys doing that because I trust her to find the story. Maria knows the way I tell stories. She has a very similar sensibility to my storytelling sense, and she can edit it in a better way than I can. So she put a very rough cut, what we call story cut. So a very rough sequence of events for the story. Maria, what she did in essence, and one day I'll have her on the live video so she can explain this. But in essence, she's looked at all the interviews, made notes of all the different stories and different topics and different different histories that were talked about, and she looks at all the interviews and makes extensive notes. And then I give her a general direction of what the coffee documentary should be, and then she takes all these notes and then starts cobbling the story together. And then the first cut that we had was like 2 hours and a half, 2 hours and 20 minutes. It was long. It was 2 hours and 20 minutes, which is good because with 2 hours and 20 minutes, then we can cut a lot. And Maria is so good that in that first initial story cut, she got it. She got the story. She got the general sequence. Was perfect. We just had to shuffle like a few things around, but she got the heart of it. Once that is made, we have that 2 hour cut, and then it's shuffled around and trimmed a bit. Then we had about an hour and a half or something like that. And that hour and a half, or a little bit longer, hour and 40 minutes or so, that hour and 40 minutes, that's when we start really tuning the story, fine-tuning the story. And that's where we really cut all the fat. Everything that needs to be cut, everything that's superfluous, that is not needed, we start slashing. Mercilessly. We have to be ruthless as editors. We have to be ruthless as filmmakers. We can't get too precious. If you're too precious as a filmmaker, you'll be editing for a very long time. There's some filmmakers out there that take years to edit their films. I never want to do that. There's a great movie called While We're Young, starring Ben Stiller, that literally is a story about a documentarian who takes way too long to make a documentary. I never want to do that. So we just mercilessly cut in the name of good entertainment. So then Maria provides me with a script outline. And since we already have the sequence of the story, since we have the general story that's all cobbled from the footage I took, then that's where I tell the story. So Maria tells me what we need for voiceover, and I write the voiceover. And the voiceover is basically tethering all these different topics together, from the coffee history to Wall Street to packaging to types of coffee to third places, and tethering that all together into a cohesive story. And that's the voiceover. And the voiceover is crucial. And Anthony Bourdain did this in his own documentaries, in his own series. And some other documentary filmmakers do this as well. The voiceover, in my opinion, is key. It makes it a lot easier as well. Because I don't want to make a slow documentary. I don't want to make a documentary that's a fly in the wall. I'm your host. I'm the one taking you on this journey. So that's why I have voiceover. It's very heavy on voiceover. But the key to voiceover is now that I know the sequence of events, I can play and I can foreshadow. And I know that if we're going to talk about third places, which is the concept of cafes being a place where we hang out, which is crucial to society, this is in the third act of the movie. I start hinting at it from the very beginning. I made mention, I think, in the first 10 minutes or so, how cafes were the backbone of American society in the 1700s. And we have the interviewees also make hint at it. So the topic at the end won't feel like it's coming out of nowhere. It feels like it's exactly what you needed to learn. And that's how we construct the story. That's why it seems well put together, because we make the story in editing, and then I solidify the story in writing. So we make these documentaries in a very different way from other documentarians. Other documentarians write a general script, film, have all the footage, maybe write the VO before putting the footage together, put the footage together, and then they have the final cut. We're kind of go in reverse. To me, the fun of a documentary is that you can find the story in editing. I don't need to find the story in filming. I don't want to find the story in filming directly. I think the fun is finding the story in editing, where you realize, oh wow, this topic about third places is actually directly related to the founding of Wall Street, and then you're like, oh shit, it all starts making sense. That's the story. You can make a coffee table book about your coffee adventures around the world, says Amy. That's a good idea. Constancy says, sounds like the way I write music. I write much more than I need to, and it's the process of elimination. Yes, so I overfilm, we over-edit, and I overwrite, and then we slash and burn in order to get a very distilled story. So that's the point. If we ever run into an issue, me and Maria, where or any editor that I work with, but Maria is my trusted editor. If we ever run into an issue where I feel like we had to add things, we did it wrong. We're not telling the right story. We need to have a lot so we can distill it, just like a good liquor. Good liquor, you start with a lot of ingredients, and then you come with a little bit of liquid because it's very strong. That's why I wanted a documentary. I want a lot of information, a lot of interviewees, a lot of locations, a lot of story, and then just condense it and distill it into something much smaller so it feels like it's a bang. It feels strong. It feels poignant. Not a moment is wasted. Especially for YouTube. YouTube, you do not want to bore anyone for even a few seconds. On a movie, yes, and I see the importance of having a little bit of slowness. But at least with this type of subject matter, I don't want to bore anyone, especially if it's about coffee. I don't want to bore anyone for one moment. Everything has to be so fast-paced. I don't want to be so fast-paced that you feel overwhelmed. No, it's a fine balance between not being overwhelmed, not being bored. You have to find that balance right in the middle, and that's fascination. Can you use the unused parts of the film to make a part two? Yes, Susie. So I have been approached with the opportunity to make a documentary series about coffee in other parts of the world. So if that happens, yes, there's an opportunity that some footage could still be used for that. Stay tuned. Product Girl says, "It is so natural for you, Ariel. This would put a lot of film students to shame." Hey, I appreciate that. I like the point of that coffees look and feel more like libraries. Yes, because this is a personal vendetta, DS. And I'm glad that you resonated with that. Because it's, yeah, I had to talk about that. How much is audio a challenge in making videos? It's a challenge. I did primary shooting, which means I filmed all the interviews and all the coffee shops here on my own. And the challenge with doing it on your own is that I have to pay attention to audio. I have to film myself because I'm the host. And I have to pay attention to the video and the camera quality and the lighting and the exposure and the focus. I unfortunately fucked up on audio on one interview. We managed to fix it. It's in the documentary. Let me know if you know what it is. But I did fuck up at one point, unfortunately, which kind of sucked. But we did manage to make it seem less obvious in editing. So shout out to Maria for figuring that out. But yeah, audio is a bitch. It is. That's why films are expensive. You have in a more higher end documentary, in the BBC documentary, you have an audio person, and that audio person, you have sometimes multiple audio people, and that takes money, that takes time. So unfortunately, no. Unfortunately, I had to do it on my own, but I made it work, and I like the challenge of making it work. Robert says, also Ariel, you have a lot of experiences with all your travels and media experience. This is in itself gives you a great monologue. Yes. I think the better experience you have, the better storyteller you are. In order to become a great storyteller, which is my goal, my goal is to be a master storyteller. Like a master. That is my goal. I want to be known as the top of storytellers. To get there, you have to have a lot of life experience, or at least a lot of. Yeah, you have to have life experience. You have to live life. If you don't, your stories will suffer. You won't have as much substance in your stories if you don't live life. Because then you'll be repeating from other people's experiences. An actor can do that. It's a very different set of skills. An actor could get away with replicating, which is a very powerful skill. But for a storyteller, you have to experience. Doesn't mean you have to suffer. Doesn't mean you have to go through tough times. Sometimes people think they have to do that. But no, I think to be a great storyteller, you just have to live life in all of its facets. You have to experience travel or exploration. You have to experience people, to experience romance and love. You have to experience spirituality. You have to experience intellectual curiosity. There's a lot of facets of life that make a great storyteller. And I think the reason why in certain cultures, like the Irish with their concept of the Sheniki, or the storyteller that has people surrounded by a campfire, usually they're depicted as older people a wise old man or a wise old woman with white hair telling everyone a cool story. It's because they lived. And they might have told the story hundreds of times, but every time they put a little bit more of themselves in it. And that's how you end up coming up with a fun story, ultimately. Hey, welcome everyone. Darlene says, I love the thought. Oh, thank you so much. The hours you put into it was so extensive. Yes, we put a lot of hours for a 1 hour YouTube video. There's a lot of YouTubers out there for sure, and then some of them have like gigantic teams. But this truly was a labor of love with a very small crew, and I hope you feel it. Because the thing is, if the crew gets a bit too big, the heart, you can lose a little bit of the heart. It gets harder to have heart in something that's with a bigger team. So it's nice to have a small team. Excuse me. What was something you personally learned about coffee that you will now try in your own home? Not so much, honestly. No, I wouldn't say I tried anything directly. I learned more about how measurements are very important, but I haven't implemented that. So, no, not so much. But I've learned other things. A waitress says, I'm off to work. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate that. Joe, nice to see you here. Angel, welcome. Susie says aging is not all that bad. Hey, welcome NYC Walking Show. I appreciate you tuning in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. How you doing? Thank you so much for the $10 super chat, NYC Walking Show. I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much. How you doing? So feel free to ask me any questions about the making of the coffee documentary. Happy to share. What was something, also, yes. Did you have any challenges of getting someone or someplace on the documentary? Yeah, Donald Schoenholtz, amazing guy, but since he's much older and he's an old school kind of guy, it was a tough time finding how to reach out to him. By the time I reached out to him, he was no longer the owner of Gillies. So I was trying to find my darnest of how to get in contact with him because this is a guy who knows a lot about coffee, for sure. Like, so much about coffee. And I was trying to figure out, how can I really get to know what he's doing? I want to like be able to interview him. So it was difficult to try to get track of him. And luckily, I got in contact with Gillies, and Gillies was now run by Johan Pezzenti, who is in the beginning of the documentary. And he was so kind enough, their team was so kind enough to connect me with Donald. But the thing is, Donald is much older. He barely comes to New York City anymore. He's much farther away. So I had to venture outside of the city in order to, I had to travel quite far in order to go over to his place and interview him. And it was wonderful. It was wonderful. It was wonderful to go up and interview him. And it was my longest on-camera interview I ever had. It was nearly 6 hours. And I asked about 6 questions. He went into that immense detail. And someone asked before what I learned the most about coffee. Um, and what I learned about coffee was through this interview. About 4 hours and a half in, I was zoning out a bit because he was going into such immense detail that I felt like, oh, I don't need this much detail for this coffee documentary. I don't need to know all this detail because he knew his stuff. He really is a deep, deep expert on coffee, especially coffee in New York. So by hour four, I was like, let's get to the point. And Inspire Life says that you prep questions. No, I don't prep questions. Unless if the interviewee reaches out to me and says, hey, do you know what you want to ask us or ask me? Then I provide like a list of questions, but I never really stick to it that specifically. I rarely had anyone say, okay, you can ask only this. I've never had that. If someone does that, then I might not interview them. So no, I don't prepare questions. But I research. I know about the person. I know about their business. I know about coffee. I know about the history. So I prepare whatever I need to know to have a good conversation. So in this context, 4 hours were passing by, and then by hour five, a little bit, hour four and a half or so, I was transported to 70s New York, completely just taken to a new place, 1970s New York. And it was fascinating because Donald was telling me that he used to run these chain of coffee stores, similar, just like Puerto Rico, under the Gillies brand. And so there was Gillies coffee stores throughout the city. And one of them was in Greenwich Village. There was another one, I think, somewhere in the east side. So he had these chain of coffee stores, not to sell coffee drinks, but to sell coffee beans. And the coffee beans would be stacked up in coffee bean bags, and the beans would be spilling out, and you'll have the aroma of the coffee, just like Puerto Rico. And this was very prominent in the 1960s and 70s. And he said that one day he got a call from this guy who was with his two friends exploring his coffee store, Gillies. And they were saying, hey, we really love your coffee store. It's very fascinating. I love how it's set up. We would love to take some photos because we're kind of inspired to do something similar. And Donald said, yeah, sure, take your photos. These three guys were from Seattle, and they started a little store called Starbucks. And at that moment, I knew, oh, coffee in New York did change the world. Oh, sorry, I got something stuck in my throat. Coffee did change the world. So at that moment, I knew, like, wow, this is a bombshell. It's not in the documentary. The reason for that is to even include that, it required a lot of context. And it required basically the story going on a tangent. And we couldn't include it. Because it would included us putting context into what is Seattle coffee culture, Starbucks, why is Starbucks important? It would have been a complete tangent. But it was good to know that in the interview because at that moment I realized, oh, how impressive, how deeply important New York is to coffee culture as a whole, not just in America, but across the world. Because it wasn't just those three Starbucks guys visiting a New York coffee store, but it was also the CEO, Howard Schultz, who's also from New York City. So Starbucks, in essence, was deeply inspired by New York. So that's when I knew this documentary would be really interesting. Even though that part is not included, everything else is supported by that moment of like, aha, oh wow, this is important. Hey, Rami says Ariel's not sleeping at all with this coffee. Nope, I have Negroni in here. No coffee in here. I just have a nice little cup that looks like a coffee cup. Hey, Pythagorean theorem stuff. Have you ever thought of buying your own espresso machine? I don't have too much space, but I do make my own Freddo espressos. I have a espresso machine right over here, right over here, and I have a whipper right over here, and I have a grinder. So I have a grinder, I have a whipper, so I make my own Freddo espresso at home. DS says, how important is lighting in the coffee shop? To me, it's supremely important. And I have a vendetta. I have a gripe with coffee shops that, in any type of restaurant or dining place, that has sharp overhead spotlighting with very high lighting intensity. I absolutely dislike this type of lighting. It invades coffee shops in New York. It invades some coffee shops in London. It is a scourge upon coffee shops. And I prefer warm lighting. Just like Cafe Reggio, there's a great cafe that's featured in the documentary as B-roll called Cafe Fellini. Conwell Coffee. There's a few coffee shops that have great warm lighting. Black Fox actually does a great job with lighting. And I think lighting is so important. I think warm lighting lends itself to a sense of coziness and peace and relaxation, while spotlighting is oppressive. And oppressive. Oppressive is a good word. It's oppressive. It's on you all the time, on your, like on top of you. I notice it makes me feel more oily and sweaty, and it's terrible for photos and video. And you're reading, and there's shadows casted on the book. I don't know. I don't know why they do that. It's quite annoying, and I really don't like it. And I hope this trend shifts back to warm lighting, like cities in Paris, like Italian cafes, many places in Greece as well, and what New York used to be lit up like, but now it's there's this trend. And I'm not sure why. I think people think cafes think we need to have great lighting. They think not great lighting. They think we have to have a very well lit space. It has to be very bright. I disagree. Cafes don't need to be bright. Most historic cafes in Europe are not that bright. They're akin to the lighting of a pub, some of them. So this obsession with bright lighting harms the ambiance of a cafe. Dr. Tashi says, congrats on the coffee documentary. Thank you so much, Dr. Tashi. I appreciate that. DS says, the lady from Venezuela, her name is Emma. I loved her vibes. I'm so glad you did. Do you think you'll enjoy a day as a barista? No. It's a lot of work. You gotta be very fast. No, I don't think I would enjoy being a barista. I think while filming this documentary, I ended up realizing I do not want to be a barista. I appreciate what they do. I wouldn't want to do it myself. Susie says, but you need light for reading. But you don't need a super bright white light for reading. It actually makes reading more uncomfortable. Warm lighting is actually perfect for reading. And especially if it's not on top of you. Because some of the spotlighting casts shadows upon the book that you're reading on. So warm lighting, in my opinion, is the perfect way to read. It doesn't need to be dimly lit like a bar, but it should be warmly lit without being oppressively bright. Hey, Remy says, I started loving espresso when Ariel made the top 5 best coffee shop videos 5 years ago. Oh, I'm so glad. Hello, Arjan. Nice to see you here. Welcome. All right. So feel free to ask me anything, any questions about coffee in general. Happy to answer them. I appreciate so many people are enjoying this. Thank you so much. I'll stick around for 7 more minutes. So feel free to ask me anything you would like. Any questions about coffee? Let's play Coffee Break, one of the best songs from Urbanist. Rhonda Girl says, talk about the process of pour over. Pour over is pretty straightforward, as seen in the documentary. It definitely is dependent on weight. The weight can make a big difference in pour over. I learned more through cupping. So through cupping, I realized, because cupping is a good way to find the best beans for a pour over. Cupping was fascinating because cupping, I ended up realizing there is a method to discerning what is a better coffee or not. That if you speak to some people, especially if you mention how, oh, this coffee's so good because of X and X reason, some people might say, you're being a bit pretentious, a bit, you're bullshitting. And while some people might be bullshitting, there is an actual way of discerning good coffee. Coffee is very similar to wine. It's very similar to herbs like oregano, real oregano. It's similar to olive oil, similar to black pepper, similar to a beer. It's similar to many other food stuff that you can discern flavors and notes and different levels of acidity or brightness or body, and it really does make a big difference. The actual different notes, and you can discern what is a good cup of coffee or not. And Silvio just left a comment saying, "Don't overcomplicate it. Don't complicate it." The thing is, Silvio, and for anyone who might be skeptical about the quality of coffee, the discerning qualities of coffee, is that even in your coffee that you buy in the supermarket or a gas station or a bodega or at the diner or at the corner store cafe or at the cafe in the Parisian street or anywhere, that coffee itself was tested by many people, a team of people, if not more, of experts, of people who can discern what beans are best. Even a Cafe Bustelo or a Folgers or a Maxwell House or a Starbucks or a Dunkin' Donuts or a Lavazza or Illy or the list goes on. Even or Costa Coffee in England. Those coffees, there's a lot of experts, people who cup, just like I showed in the documentary, who are able to tell oh, we can't sell this bean from X country. Maybe we should be using this other bean from X country so we can maintain the quality of our Costa coffee or a Cafe Nero or a Lavanza or whatnot. It's very, very important. It's not pretentious. It's not overcomplicating things. Coffee is a very delicate drink that can easily be messed up. And even in the most unpretentious coffee, quote unquote, it's still a lot of work and thought that goes behind it. So yes, there is good coffee and there is bad coffee. And that's that. How would you describe Kona coffee? I haven't had enough Kona coffee to really tell you a discernible difference on my end, unfortunately. Yeah, I haven't had that much Kona coffee. People don't realize how complicated and specialized coffee beans can be. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Would you go to other places for coffee? Will you go to other coffee places in other states? I do, Amy. Yeah, every time I go visit a new place, I go to a new coffee shop. Daryl says, I remember you and Jennifer O'Brien making the best coffee videos in New York. Yes, we did. We already did one long time ago. So I've done 2 best coffee shop videos many, many years ago. Would you ever think about starting a coffee brand? Yeah, I would. Yeah, I think it would be really interesting to start a coffee brand, for sure. I would have to find a roaster I really trust, which I think I have in this coffee documentary. Yeah, I would. I would at some point. When that one guy was talking about ratios, he lost me. Yes, yes, and that's the point. that's that's why we included the documentary. That's literally when you asked about pour overs. It's not really an interesting answer. Unfortunately, pour overs. It's about cupping and it's about the measurements. Basically, that's how you get a good pour over. There's not much romance in the pour over or many coffee drinks. One could try and make it romantic, but ultimately it's down to math and a certain consensus on taste. I think I heard somewhere that it helps with Alzheimer's because coffee is good to retain memory. So coffee, it's no coincidence that coffee coincides with major revolutions in politics, schools of thought and philosophy, and the Industrial Revolution. This is very evident. A lot of political revolutions started literally in coffee shops. I've been to some of them, like in Austria, in Italy, in France. Certain coffee shops have been key to kickstarting political schools of philosophy. This is evident because I've also been to those coffee shops in Italy, in France, in England. Financial markets, because I've been to those coffee shops, or I've talked about what used to be those coffee shops in London, in New York. And also the Industrial Revolution, because I've talked about the entrepreneurs and the industrialists that have met in the coffee shops and come up with ideas in these coffee shops in places like Edinburgh, London, France, etc. So it's very, very, coffee is pivotal to the development of society in many aspects. And if you were to remove coffee from the equation, it could potentially take it longer to get to where we are at right now. Coffee is an incredible drug. It is a drug. It is a psychoactive substance. And the psychoactive part of it is that it makes us more alert, makes us more able to do repetitive tasks, and it also enables us to think clearly. So coffee is incredibly powerful. People really underestimate it. And to a certain extent, tobacco as well. Tobacco is more trickier territory. I would love to one day make a documentary about tobacco, because tobacco has a very, very bad rap. But coffee is one of those few drugs, along with tobacco, along with a few others, where it was crucial for mass change in society. And we can't take that for granted. We have to realize that coffee is not just some silly bean juice that we drink. Coffee literally has changed the world. Whether you like it or not, it has changed the world. It's fact. It's evident, and because of that, it's important that we take it seriously. That we don't take it for granted. That every cup of coffee is an opportunity to change the world. Cynthia says, "Yeah, many people who don't take caffeine look sluggish." Yeah, exactly. Well, like if you compare it directly to alcohol, which was a drink of choice prior to the caffeine revolution of the 1600s or so, most of Europe was mostly drinking more alcohol than any other substance. And alcohol is a complete opposite. Alcohol does not create alertness. Alcohol inhibits alertness. Alcohol does not encourage repetitive tasks. It inhibits repetitive tasks. Alcohol has some benefits, and of course, it has many ills. But coffee is a very, very important drug. Macaulay says, "My wife and I loved your documentary. We're going to watch your documentaries in Greece before we go next year." Hey, Macaulay's, I'm so happy you guys are still tuning in. Thank you so much for watching all these documentaries. I appreciate it. So everyone, thank you so much for watching. This is a Q&A of my coffee documentary. If you enjoyed it, do share it with friends and family who are fans of coffee or of New York. The list of the cafes featured is in the description of the video, so you can use that as a guide of some of the best coffee in New York. If you do see these baristas in person, say hi to them. Tell them that you saw the documentary. I'll probably put a smile on their faces. I guarantee you will put a smile on their faces. And also, I really appreciate everyone tuning in. Feel free to leave a comment. Comments really help with spreading a video like this. Comments show the YouTube algorithm that like, people like this. This is interesting. So if you enjoyed this and want to lend your support in a tiny little way, you can leave a comment. And if you want full, extended, uncut interviews, they will be posted to patrons, patreon.com/urbanist, patreon.com/urbanist. One more time, huge round of hearts to my team, Maria Epida Querido, who's the editor, Caterina Cacu, who's the colorist and the illustrator, and also Emma Carrero, who was featured in the documentary but also did additional photography, and to all the people featured in the documentary for helping making this happen. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate. And then most importantly is the audience. A good movie, a good film is nothing without someone to watch it and enjoy it. So round of hearts to you, the audience out there, people watching these videos and these documentaries. Thank you so much for watching. Everyone, I'll be back later on, with more documentaries. They'll be in the wintertime. You'll see a documentary about Edinburgh, Scotland, which will be really fascinating. And then more documentaries to come in the future, more live streams and more short videos to come. So stay tuned. And then Urbanist Day is on September 7th. So stay tuned. I'm going to celebrate Urbanist Day around the afternoon, around 3 p.m.-ish. So stay tuned for that announcement. Everyone, keep being awesome and always keep on exploring. And stay caffeinated, my friends. Bye-bye.